At this point, I really don't think I need to explain who Kanye West is. He has done a lot of stuff in the music world that it's pretty hard to ignore, but nowadays I can't really give any more compliments. But at the least, he has one of the most consistent, experimental, and memorable discographies any artist can receive. And there's definitely something for everyone when it comes to Kanye. However, one discussion that always comes to mind is, which album is better from the rest? And since I have listened to every Kanye album, I thought it would feel appropriate to rank them all from worst to best. Now, the requirements are going to be simple. I am only going to be including his solo studio albums, so no collab albums like Watch the Throne with Jay-Z, Kid Zico's with Kid Cudi, and Vultures 1 and 2 with Ty Dolla $ign. Thankfully, compilations will also not be included, so no Cruel Summer or Good Friday, and none of his mixtapes or demos, including Bully since it's just a demo video. Just his solo studio discography. I want this to be a shorter video with really no time to waste, so with that out of the way, let's get into ranking every single Kanye West album. If you're a typical Kanye fan, this album placement may not even surprise you in the slightest. But the thing is, it really isn't that bad as people say it is. 2018 was a rather interesting and enjoyable time to be a Kanye fan. We would see him release more of his albums, as well as executing and producing some others, and one of those albums was the 9th studio album, Jesus King. This is where we would see Kanye take an interesting approach in his career. This was during the time he would stay in Wyoming and focus more on his music while also getting closer to his religion. And that's how Jesus King was made. But there were two problems. One, who lives in Wyoming? And two, the only reason that this album exists was because of Yandhi. Yandhi was an album that was very anticipated by fans, with multiple snippets and even a false tweet. The album ultimately got scrapped, and that's how Jesus King was made. While it sucks we eventually never get Yandhi, we could take this with a grain of salt. With that said, the album is still pretty good. A lot of these songs are really unique, whether it be a typical rap song with Christian themes, or it would be a full-on gospel song with help from the Sunday service choir. Too bad that this album includes Close on Sunday. The album is not all bad, but I could somewhat value its critiques. My top 3 on this album are On God, Follow God, and God Is. Just a bit of a warning, this album was something I wasn't even considered being released, and it just so happened to be released in the middle of making this video. I'm of course talking about Donna 2. This was released as a demo, available only on the STEM player on February 22nd, 2022. Kinda convenient, huh? 3 years later, and finally re-released for streaming services. Now, the album is a step down from the original Donna, obviously. It feels like there's less cohesion with its usual meanings that we would expect from a sequel to Donna. And it's an interesting album to re-release in general considering his recent actions, and this would finally be his official 11th studio album. Even if it was on another account. And it looks like it's not going to last long, as it might be taken down soon already due to clearance issues and all that stuff. So as of writing the script, it has yet to be taken down. I might make a separate discussion video on this album in the future since I still have a lot to process. So if that's something you might be interested in, please let me know. My top 3 on this album are Happy, Pablo, and We Did It. 2016 was such a good year for music. There were a lot of albums that released that year that stood on their own and were overall amazing. Untitled Unmastered, Awaking My Love, A Moonshade Pool, Starboy, Atrocity Exhibition, Imperial, Jeffrey, Blonde. There were so many memorable releases that year, and I ain't even scratched the surface. And it just so happened to have Kanye's 7th studio album, The Life of Pablo. Up to this point, Kanye was unstoppable. There really wasn't anything stopping him. What was there to stop him? The Life of Pablo. I found this album to be probably his most overrated album by far. There is some good material on here. That's pretty much it. It's just a bit too inconsistent to even have a high enough enjoyment. But what I do like is a theme. If you look at the cover art, you can see that it asks you which one, a happy family or a lack of judgment. And the mood of this album keeps on switching theming and sound wise, where you get more calmer songs about religion, or you just get a watered down version of Chief Keef. Sounds cool, but the balance is pretty off. Most of the tracks revolve more on the Christian themings, which isn't bad, but there's less focus on the other side. It would have been better if he didn't scrap so many albums, worked on the album even more so it would be more finished, and if his mental problems did not get in the way. Oh wait, the Pablo tour. It only happened for around half of the dates, ranging from August 25th to November 19th in 2016. It was cancelled due to his infamous Sacramento show. You can probably guess why. I still think the album's good though, just not one of his best. My top 3 on this album are FML, St. Pablo, and even though this isn't my favorite Kanye album, it holds the title for having my favorite Kanye song of all time, No More Parties in LA. Kanye was going through something in 2018. Not only was he releasing and producing a bunch of albums, but this is where his mental problems came into play. As he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, he decided to make an entire album out of it, and that would become 2018's Yay, his 8th studio album. This would go down as Kanye's shortest album in his discography, clocking in at 23 minutes with only 7 songs. While it doesn't seem that much, I think when it offers more than makes up for what this album is trying to say. This is a great introspective look at Kanye's mental state, with topics about his mental illness, his family, as well as addiction. This would actually parallel his collab album with Kid Cudi, Kids See Ghosts, where it also dives deep into mental health problems. But for now, Ye's a really good deep cut in Kanye's discography. Can't say that much about Ye the person. My top 3 on this album are I Thought About Killing You, Ghost Town, and Violent Crimes. At this point in his career, Kanye was at the top of the world at the time. He had released some of the most iconic albums of all time, his publicity status was unmatched, and he just so happened to be very likable. In some ways. But just like every artist, trauma comes into play, and in Kanye's case, will leave a long-lasting impact on not only himself, but his career. November 10th, 2007, we would see the death of Kanye's mother, Donna West, his biggest supporter, as well as the breakup of his then fiancée. These events would take his career into a completely different direction. Instead of working on the 4th album in the College Dropout series, he would make 2008's 808s and Heartbreak. This would feature Kanye being more melodic with his singing, as well as experimenting with autotune. And because of that, it ended up being his most influential album of all time. Wait, what? How does that happen? If it weren't for this album, we would have never gotten a lot of the current melodic rappers in the modern day. Examples being Don Toliver, Lil Uzi Vert, and Juice WRLD, just to name a few. But how good is this album? Well, its biggest problem is the pacing, as a lot of tracks drag on for a bit, like more than they really need to. Because of that, it also unnecessarily increases the runtime in the album. It's not that bad, but for how big this album was, it's kind of jarring. But these songs are really good on their own, it just doesn't work well when together. And Pinocchio Story is a thing, I guess. My top 3 on this album are Cold as Winter, Streetlights, and Love Lockdown. Some of the catchiest songs I have heard from Kanye. I promise this is where my hot takes are going to end, so please just stay with me here. I know how absolutely iconic this album is, and while it's a good thing, it also isn't. 2007's Graduation would pretty much cement Kanye's status as being a global superstar, selling a ridiculous amount of first week sales, all while competing against 50 Cent with his album, Curtis. Guess the comparison. And on top of all that, the album itself is just really good as well. You can't talk about Kanye West without mentioning Graduation. You just can't. But the thing is, I think this album is alright in comparison. The biggest thing for me is just the sound, and while it does sound good, you can pretty much tell it was made in 2007. It hasn't really aged the best, and on top of that, it's also a bit too simplistic. It plays itself very safe, which I don't really blame him, as he's trying to do a lot to be the biggest thing at the time, all while doing less. So while this album is still really good, it's just the little things that push it back from you a bit. And hot take, Drunken Heart Girls is not bad at all. I don't know what y'all be on about. My top 3 on this album are Everything I Am, Homecoming, and Champion. Also, release Bittersweet Poetry but Roy, please. I want to hear this more. The amount of money you have to spend to make one of the greatest albums of all time is really impressive. 2010 is what I consider to be the golden age of Kanye, which is widely considered magnum opus, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. This album is really what it sets out to be. Amazing messages that play throughout the entire album, and not to mention the sound. This stands out as Kanye's most prestigious and complex production in his career. You can listen to any song in this album and tell that this took a while to make. There were also 8 different cover arts on top of it. That's how you know Kanye really wanted to lock in. And just like with almost every other Kanye album, it's not made of any sort of event. In this case, it's the infamous Taylor Swift VMAs incident. And this album will be born because of that, and a bunch of other things. And let me say, the short film it released with is really cool. I won't say much about this, but just watch if you haven't already. It's such an interesting film. But the album itself, just like Graduation, there are some parts that haven't really aged well. This time it just comes down to how much it's doing. I mean, look at the track lengths. Most of them go over the 5-minute mark. It's really not that bad, but there's just a bit too much runtime in these songs. But what's featured is some of Kanye's best work to date. My top 3 on this album are Monster, So Appalled, and Devil in a New Dress. Probably Kanye's best 3-track run of all time. We are used to Kanye's signature style and authenticity. Whenever he releases a new album, even if the sound structure was new, we can pretty much expect what we are getting. And then Yeezus came out. That's what happened in 2013, and I feel like this might be Kanye's best H album of the early 2010s. Other albums at the time were also good, but felt pretty exclusive at the time. With Yeezus, because of its experimental structure, it allows itself to be carefree as it could be and have it not be tied down to the time it was made. With only 10 tracks clocking at 40 minutes, its main goal is to provide quality over quantity. Its unapologetic nature is best held with Kanye's ego, as it takes everything he was known for at the time and throws it out the window. But at the same time, it also allowed him to reinvent the genre again with the acid trip-like production, which we will see a lot of people adapt to in the future. So you can thank Yeezus for what is done once again from Kanye. My top 3 on this album are Hold My Liquor, Guilt Trip, and Black Skinhead. I just wish this would be the last album that Kanye would put out. Guess how that goes. It was interesting and special to see 2021's Donna release. And this album in general is just beautiful. This whole album not only continues Kanye's journey of being a Christian, but is solely dedicated to his late mother. And this is also the longest album in his discography, clocking at 1 hour and 48 minutes. Not only that, the deluxe extends the time by 32 minutes. He really wanted to go all in for this album, all for the artwork to be completely nothing. With there being multiple versions being worked on, a bunch of listening parties, a competition between Drake and his album Certified Boy Lover, and even the Donna live stream, which apparently is now considered lost media. This album went through a lot of development hell, and what this album turned out to be is by far Kanye's most underappreciated album. These songs are beautiful. He really learned a lot from Dark Fantasy, making it as theatrical as it could be. I'm still impressed with the production of this. Even the simpler ones still feel really good. But the thing is, there's a little bit too much for this album. I think there could have been some tracks removed, as some of them tend to blend in with each other. Especially with the part 2 tracks. Although it's neat, it feels a bit unnecessary. But even with all of that, Donna is an album that will continue to impress me with its meaning and the amazing quality. My top 3 on this album are Hurricane, Jail, and Moon. I will say, if Life of the Party wasn't on the deluxe, this would have been my favorite song. But I'll leave it at that. Honestly, these last 3 entries can be very dependent on what you prefer more. These 2 are so close in quality that it's hard to even find slight differences. Ultimately, I decided to put 2005's Late Registration at this spot. This album is really something special. Imagine yourself going through a hard time, having trouble trying to reach a specific goal that you've been chasing for a while. Nothing seems to be working, but eventually, you start to gain hope, and when all seems lost, you finally accomplish your journey. That is what this entire album feels like. It feels like a progression of yourself, while celebrating what you have accomplished on top of it. It's uplifting, inspiring, and most importantly, fun. Every time I listen to this album, I always get left with a smile on my face. That's how you know you made a fantastic album. And it sucks to see where the once talented man is heading to right now. But I'm not gonna get into that. Late Registration is what a perfect sequel does in so many ways. It not only captures a lot of its predecessor's energy and charisma, but allows itself to be its own thing while still feeling like another entry. Hell, there's even a live composition of this album, Late Orchestration. That is all I need at the end of the day. My top 3 on this album are Heard Him Say, Hey Mama, and of course, We Major. We still have one more album to talk about, so let's finish it off with the grand finale. From the moment you clicked on this video, you obviously knew I was going to be at the top without even watching the full thing. I really don't need any explanation as to why 2004's The College Dropout is not only Kanye's best album in my opinion, but is also considered to be one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time. Literally, take everything that I said from Late Registration and put them over here, but to a much higher degree. What sets this apart from me though are 2 things. 1, the general presentation. From the cover art, the single covers, the music videos, and even the songs themselves, they're going to offer a grand experience that can only be described as a mix of encouragement and self-discovery. And 2, its confidence and willpower. Since this is Kanye's debut studio album after releasing a few mixtapes and getting a name for himself as a producer, he wanted to do all that he can for a career-starring album. And when it came out, everyone loved it. He sounds like the most confident person you can ever ask for in an album like this, and it shows to all the things featured. Having memorable songs and features, the new and fresh Chipmunk Soul production, the general meaning of what he wants to offer, hell, an entire song being made with his jaw wired shut from a car crash. He never stopped a single bit. I listened to this album so many times, and it still aged beautifully, and rightfully so. This is an album that needs to be listened to by everyone, no matter the circumstances. You will find at least something to appreciate from this, and it continues to stand the test of time as an absolutely beautiful masterpiece. My top 3 on this album are Jesus Walks, Spaceships, which was my number 1 for a while, but that has since been replaced by Family Business. The College Dropout is still regarded as a true work of art from nowadays a washed artist. It's insane how big of a discography that Kanye has made and how much of an impact each one brought. He was a different thing back then, and it's still sad to see one of the greatest artists of all time to end up in one of the worst spirals we have seen in recent time. Will we ever get old Kanye back? No, absolutely not. I'm just gonna admit that there. However, that doesn't mean we shouldn't really ignore the work that he has done. I don't want to get into the conversation of separate art from the artist, because that could easily be a video on its own. But just take my words with a grain of salt. At least I am self-aware of it. So if you enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It means a ton. But for now, I'm glad to leave it off here. This has been ranking every Kanye studio album, and I'm ranking every Ye studio album. Thanks for watching.